on the current economic environment. We're going to share tips for people who want to sell the property, because also their parameters have changed. And people that are maybe today renting and thinking of buying, also that topic will be covered. There's time for questions at the end. We will use the chat function of Zoom. So please, if you've got questions, just type them in, and we will see them here with our team. We have 3 people from Inspire in the room here, and we will address them at the end, okay? Received quite some questions up front, so that's very good. Before we start, very, very briefly, this is not to talk about what do we do, who are we? This is about what's the objective of the webinar. To share analysis, to share knowledge, share very practical examples that help you as a buyer, investor, or seller take better decisions. That's the objective. Information, insights to help you make better decisions. That's what we want to achieve today. And just briefly before we jump into the content, who are we? Who is Inspire? So people that contract our services, they know one thing, and that's they're never alone during this process of buying or selling a property. That's very important to know. So imagine you don't have to worry about what decision to take. Is it a good property? You don't have to worry about there's someone there. Imagine you have responses to your questions, to your doubts. Somebody is anticipating. That is our role, making sure that whatever decision you take is a decision we believe in, it's a good decision, and it's a decision you can be proud of. You will know it's the best possible informed decision, whether you buy, invest, or sell in the property market here. So we want to make sure you get right decisions. Right decisions also means that nothing goes wrong in the process, that there's no surprises, that there's no fraud by agencies or by sellers, that you don't pay too much. That's not part of it. So all this experience we share with you today, and we will start with a bit of context, and then I dive into the impact of the economy on the property market. So where are we today? What do we see on the property market today? And today means since, apologies, I forgot one thing, and my colleague just reminds me. So you know now who we are. Let me ask a short question to you. I'm going to launch a question, a poll on your screen. If we know who you are, we can pick better examples. If everyone says here that you're looking at selling a property, then we don't need to give examples for investors. If we see it's a mix, we will use mixed examples. We're going to try and adapt it as good as we can on your profile, your personal situation. So you should see a pop-up message on your screen. Yes, I see people are responding. Good, half of the people responded. So the other half, just have a look please at your screen, and it's going to just make it a lot more relevant for everyone. So we see now, so far the majority of the people is interested in buying property sometime this year. Okay, but 15 out of 18, 6, I think there's 2 more people, but this is fine. We probably have a good view. So basically everyone is interested in buying or investing. There's no people that have indicated selling a property, which is good. So then we don't need to talk too much about that part. And for your information, 80%, 90% nearly says they're thinking of doing this between now and sometime later this year. So, okay, that makes it very, very relevant, I think. There we go, close this. So, what happened in the market? The market shifted with COVID-19, with economic slowdown and shutdown outwards, from a market where the buyer was in a good position, but there was a lot of demand and supply, a lot of transactions in Spain, to an absolute buyer's market. The buyer is in control of the market today. The sellers will have to adjust a lot more to markets or to buyers' conditions. There will be very important opportunities to buy properties or to invest in properties. But things have changed, and that's part of what I want to do here is if you've done some research on the property market, let's say in January or December last year, you have an idea of prices, of areas. So a lot of these things have changed. So you might well take a very wrong decision based on information, knowledge you have that is 6 months old. So we'll explain what that means. There is a challenge to find good opportunities on the market. They are there, the opportunities exist, but you've got to find them. And that's not always going to be easy. At the same time, discounts, we see in our daily work that there is important discounts on the market. We are buying properties at prices that simply did not exist, let's say in January or February, but these discounts are not advertised. For some people that have an urgent need for cash, that need to sell quickly, some of them just prefer to keep it very private and not too proud of their situation. For whatever reasons, they might need cash, but it's not advertised. And the ones that are advertised properties are often still above market prices. What we see as well in today's market is that good properties sell quickly. It's always been the case, but even more now with the off-market segment. Some properties never come on the listing platforms in Spain, just because they're good deals at a sharp price, and they go quickly. So context, wrap up. Buyer's market, opportunities, but there's also some caution. And a few words on that caution. What you need to watch out for in the market today. Some things are the same as they were in the past, but some things are very different. Most of you are, I think, international people living or not living in Barcelona. But one thing very important to remind those who own a property might know it already, those who've been searching might have seen it. The property market in Spain is not regulated. It's hard to believe, but in Spain, anyone can sell properties. You don't need training, you don't need qualification, you don't need to register if you want to sell properties. There are some regional exceptions, but they don't mean too much. That's different from your home country. So when you talk to agencies, keep that in mind. That also means the fact that there's no framework that a seller can be the owner, but it's very often an agency. They're not obliged to inform you as a buyer of all the data, potential problems or defects of a property. Even if there is financial debt or other charges on a property, they don't have to tell you. If you don't ask the question as an investor, as a buyer, they probably won't tell you. Okay, this is, for us, we work with the buyers, one of the most frustrating parts when you feel that there is this lack of professionalism and an absolute lack of transparency in transactions who are, for most people, at least financially speaking, one of the biggest decisions in their lives, financially. And so that's a big part of our job, is looking that there's no problems on that part. And the third element why Spain is different is that the notary, potentially in your home country, the notary has a lot of checks and controls on the property, on the transaction, on the contracts. It's not the case in Spain. So notary is only involved the last 1.5 hours of a several-month journey of investing or of buying. So keep these things in mind. That non-regulation leads to a lack of transparency. What I mean by that, if you look at a property, it's very hard to figure out what are the actual square meters of the property. Or it's very hard to figure out if in that community of neighbors, if it's an apartment, if that community of owners, if everyone is nicely paying their contributions every month to the community. It's very hard to find out if there is technical problems with properties. There is no single database, for instance, on property prices or property histories, which you do have in quite some other countries. At the same time, as I said before, good properties sell quickly, so you need to take quick decisions, but there's a lack of information. And that's often where people make mistakes. And that's where it starts to go wrong, because the purchase is rational, but for many people also an emotional element, emotional component. And that's where we see too many people that take decisions too quickly, which basically means they pay too quickly or they sign too quickly. the wrong documents or they pay too much. As a foreign buyer, more than ever, the market will slow down in terms of transactions. We expect in Spain to see on average 15 to 20% less transactions than last year. To put it in context, it means 1 of 5 won't happen compared to last year. So it's not a disaster number. It's just, I think, 1 in 5 less. But as a foreign buyer, agencies know very well that foreign buyers very often have a higher disposable budget for property buyers and have less reference points, and therefore by default they will try and charge you more for the property, or they will just say there's less margin for negotiation, just because they know there's less reference point for you. This is going to be more relevant now because agencies will struggle. Transactions will go down. That means for Barcelona and surrounding villages and cities, there's more than 2,000 realtors in Barcelona. Again, without qualification. Many of them will go out of business because there's lack of transactions. Many of them are small agencies in a certain area of the city. Now, imagine you like a property, you pay a deposit. Let's say you pay 10% and you pay that to the agency. Let's say you've paid 30,000 euros. What if that agency goes out of business? What if tomorrow they don't pick up the phone anymore? So that is things that are new, that didn't happen a few years ago or a few months ago. And that's things we need to pay extra attention to. What we see as well, and it's maybe not that much a surprise, but it's the same because some people want to sell and agencies need business. They will present, and they are presenting, bad properties as bargains. And a bargain is often flagged by a low price. And the reason is they invent whatever story to justify the low price. The owners, it's a divorce, they need to sell, or they need money for their business. It's all good. But we've rejected, since 3 weeks we can visit properties again in Spain. The market is open. I think we've probably rejected more properties in the last 3 weeks than in the last 6 months. And that's because some of them are presented as bad properties. That's an important data point. And to manage risk, many people ask us, do you need a lawyer? Is that important too? Because you might have done some research and you know a lawyer is important. Of course, we always recommend to have a lawyer involved. That's why we have a team of lawyers when buying a property. But you can also buy a property which is not at a good location or which has technical problems with a perfect contract. So that's why we got to be mindful of it as well. Yesterday, Gonzalo, and now I copy Professor Gonzalo's example. He said, if you buy a car and you go to the car dealer, would you take a lawyer with you to buy the car? Because you're going to sign some documents, you might spend 15, 20, 40 or 60,000 euro on the car. There's some warranty involved, and maybe you take a mortgage to buy that car. So would you take a lawyer to that car dealer? And you probably won't, right? I would rather trust a good car mechanic because that person knows about the stuff. It's the same in real estate, and that's what we want to do. Where the lawyer is important, you can't, or at least recommend you don't buy without a lawyer. That's why we have them. But you need the expert to look at the property market, and how is this going? Is it long-term a good investment? What about potential returns? What type of tenant do you get in these markets? And what is the risk profile of an investor, etc., etc. Okay, so opportunities, yes, definitely. Caution, very important to think about that. Okay, so talking a bit now about. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here because we now I talk about the economy. It stopped, yes. All right. So real estate in Spain, but everywhere, depends directly on the health of an economy and on the interest rates. The interest rates is low, it generates more demand for properties from buyers, from investors. The economy basically allows more people to to buy properties, of course. Let's look now at what we think will happen this year and next year, approximately, in terms of the property market in Barcelona. We got some questions, very good questions up front around how does this compare with the previous financial crisis in 2008 and the later years. So Spain today is, as most countries across Europe and many across the world, is in a very difficult economic situation, of course. We expect that the GDP can drop this year, 2020, by 10%. Can be a bit more, a bit less, but 10% is possible this year. Now, let's put that in context. A 10% drop looks very big, but in the previous crisis, 2009 was the worst year in Spain for the previous crisis. The GDP dropped by 3.7%. Yeah? And between 2008 and 2013, these years, the GDP in Spain dropped by 9.1%. So what does that mean? The impact we had in the past over 6 years, we will see it now condensed in 1 year, approximately 9–10% drop. In 2008, the banks were in a way worse position than today. The debt level of families was extremely high, was dangerous. All these things are very different today. Banks are in better positions. People don't have in Spain these high debt levels. It's all sanitized. But also in 2008, I think there were some important mistakes made by the governments, by Europe. Europe did not buy national debt until 2015. So they were waiting, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, to buy debt. Austerity was very important for Europe, and therefore the crisis in Spain and in some other countries took 3 years longer than in some other countries. Many countries had a 6-year crisis, while in the US, I think after a year and a half, 2 years, they were back to normal. At the same time, in 2008, the interest rates were 4.25%. Today we are at historically low interest rates. And that these things are very different. But I think the most optimistic thing for the economy and therefore impact on real estate is that Europe is acting as a team, as a club. I would dare to say they're injecting. I think the latest number is now around $750 billion in the economies. That's a very big effort to stimulate growth, a very big effort that will help to get quickly out of the recession and on the track of recovery. The Central Bank of Europe is buying debt, which in principle should avoid that countries like Spain, Portugal, Italy would have a debt crisis again. Gonzalo did a calculation yesterday. These are his numbers. He said even of course, this debt needs to be paid back by the countries. For Spain, what does that mean? The incremental cost or the cost of the incremental debt because of this injection of capital for this year and next year is estimated to be $1.5 billion. It's a big number, but compare that, Spain's national budget as a state is $480 billion. So they can absorb that. They'll be able to absorb that. It's not something that's going to cause too big problems. That's very positive. So that Europe is acting solidarily and very, very, very confident for the economy. It's going to give a lot of confidence to businesses, to buyers as well. Now, a lot is going to depend as well on how Spain reacts. It's not just Europe, but the Spanish government. They've not done too well so far. They've not taken too many measures to stimulate the economy or tourism, which is a big part of the economy. But if they manage it as it's expected that they will manage it, economists think that the economy will be back at the level of 2019 by the third quarter of 2022. So that's not too far away from now. At the same time, while we think the economy might drop 9 to 10% in terms of GDP this year, we also think that the economy might grow again 7% next year. That's very, very strong growth. Of course, this is conditional upon not having a second wave of a strong corona outbreak. This could obviously change the panorama drastically. So that's the macroeconomic view on that. So how does that impact the property markets? We focus mainly on Barcelona and surrounding areas, not too much on the rest of Spain. Interesting enough, if you look at property portals, and again, there we go, again, lack of transparency and lack of consistency. Property portals show a 1.3% price increase in properties over the last few months. It's crazy. It's wrong. There's no price increases on properties. Nobody's paying more for a property today than 3 months ago. Nobody. So why is that happening? Because owners, local owners or owners of properties, there's a crisis, they know, but you know what? My property is better than the average property. My property is worth more than the average property. That's a very strong belief in Barcelona. It's unfortunately not reality, but a lot of people think that. At the same time, agencies, and they fight for mandates to sell properties in Barcelona. And because they don't have to be transparent, they don't need to be share all information or give proper appraisals of a property when they want to get a mandate to sell. No, the way 95% of agencies in Spain uses or the method they use to evaluate a property and to define an asking price for a property is, listen well, they ask the owner how much you want for your property. The owner says, I want 320,000. The agency says, I think I can sell it for 350. The other agency asks the same question and they say, I think I can sell it for 355. And the third agency says for 360. So which agency gets the mandate? Many owners give it to the one with the highest overpromise. So it's very far away from reality, but that is how it works. And that is also why prices are not dropping now, because those agencies, they are afraid to call their customers now, they call the owners now and say, I've not been transparent to you before, your property is not worth 360, because there's a very big gap. Expectations of the owner now, 360, caused by the agency. Real market value that would have, price that would have been correct when they started to commercialize the property, and then the correction today for economic recession for Corona. So that's a double correction to make. And those agencies, those commercial people, they're worried to call up their clients and tell them the truth now. We lose clients, and there was an example yesterday in the webinar. We lose clients because we tell them the truth sometimes. And sometimes we have people that say, I want to sell my property, how much do you think it's worth? And if we think it's 290 and they want 330, I mean, we're going to say 290 because that's our professional opinion. And we have customers that say that are not customers of us because of the honest message. I'm also confident they might come back later when they see that the market is actually not selling or not paying these high prices. There's no buyers today who would pay the same price for a property as in February. Everybody knows there is an adjustment taking place. Again, this is not only for Spain. The economic impact is the same in many other countries. Property prices will drop in many countries across the world. But Barcelona is, of course, Barcelona and remains Barcelona. So if a property price is right, it sells very quickly. We've seen it in the last 3 weeks. The second day after being allowed to visit properties again, 3 weeks ago, that was on a Tuesday, properties were on the market on a Monday, off the market on Tuesday. They're sold already because the price was good, was attractive. So you buy with a discount. And now let's go to some numbers. What does it mean buying with a discount? We think that overall for Barcelona, overall average, prices will drop, are dropping by 7 to 8% price drops, and about 1 in 5 less transactions, 20% less transactions. Now, that's average numbers. We've got to be very careful with numbers who are averages of averages of averages, because the average property does not exist. Just imagine one building in the center of Barcelona, and you take, extreme example, you take the first floor and you take the top floor, the penthouse, right? First floor is noisy, darker, lower ceilings, etc. Top floor is bright, sunny, maybe a terrace. It's the same building, it's the same location, and the property price is very different. The same if a property is facing street view or facing the inner court, these prices might change a bit sometimes, or the street is more noisy or less noisy. So again, an average price that's not gonna, so don't think now I've seen a property, I'm gonna get 8% discount and try and negotiate, and then I've done a good deal. No, that's not what's gonna happen. Why? Some examples. People that, or maybe one step back. Who is buying properties today? Who do we expect to buy properties tomorrow? And with tomorrow, I mean, let's say this year. Which buyers do we think will be active on the market? Different groups. One, people who see an opportunity to buy a property to live, to buy a better property than what they could have afforded in the past, or maybe they couldn't buy in the past. Combination of a lower price and extremely low interest rates. Two is people that want to buy a property as an investment, a buy-to-let operation. You buy an apartment and you rent it out and generate monthly recurring stable income, stable cash flow. Those people as well. And a third group is people that maybe this group is going to be less active in the beginning because they don't know it yet. And it's people that are today renting properties and can now switch from renting to buying, from renting to owning a property. And again, because the same reasons. So that's 3 types of buyers: to live, to invest, and change from rent to buy. By the way, to live is also includes a second residence. Huh? It's for own usage. It can be property in Barcelona, it can be properties on the coast in Spain, or just apartments, central apartments. It's included there. The buyers that will buy and I think buyers will become younger as well. People that will buy will be solvent buyers, people with some liquidity. But solvent buyers doesn't mean you need €1 million on your bank account. What it means today is if you have let's say, customers with the lowest level of entry, lowest entry point in terms of own capital, they bring €40,000 to the table of own capital, and the rest is financed. And that allows them to buy a property of between €240,000 and €260,000 in the center of Barcelona. I mean, that's what a lot of people dream of. That's what a lot of young people can afford, can pay back in terms of a mortgage as well. €40,000, €50,000 of own capital is not a lot for many people, and will allow to. The banks are very eager to finance you if you meet one condition: stable income. You need a job, you need stable income. That's important. But again, within the expat community in Barcelona, national community, a lot of people work for larger companies, sometimes with a higher salary than some locals or than in local companies, and qualify very well for obtaining financing in Spain, locally here. All right. That's who is buying. Then if you think, where are people looking at properties? Where do we think there are opportunities on the market? So the price drops, the discounts across Spain. You will find them across the country. It doesn't matter if it's a big city, inland, or the coast, but it's going to be very different. What the situation will generate is, for Barcelona specifically, opportunities at very central, excellently located spots in the center. For those who know Barcelona, that can be That can be Eixample, that can be Uptown, San Gervasi, Bonanova, it can be Borne, it can be St. Anthony, it can be Poble Sec, it can be the area closer to the sea. That's central areas where good properties are on the market with discounts today. Why are people buying there, and why are they for sale with so interesting discounts? A lot of people who want or need to sell today. So if an owner is not in a rush, he might take his property off the market and just wait, or maybe just rent it out for another year and see what the market is. If you need cash, and the typical example is in the past was a divorce or an inheritance. People want to close a chapter and start a new chapter in their life. That still applies, of course. These things still happen. But there's another group of owners who is selling now, and that is people who were freelancers, people who run a small business, people who owned a larger business. That business has suffered in the last several months because of the economy. They need cash, liquidity to inject in their business. Those people, we've seen a lot of these people that contact us. They prefer not to get financing through a bank. They have seen what can go wrong 12 years ago if you have too much financial exposure with banks, too much debt. It's not helping them in many areas to grow their business. So what do? They sell non-essential assets. It's not a place where they live, of course, but it is things like a second residence, a house on la Costa Brava, a house on la Costa Blanca, a house in the inland somewhere, or just apartments that are rented in the center of Barcelona. Those people were or are the wealthier segment of the population in Barcelona. Where did they invest in the past? In areas that they know well. They love to invest in streets they know, in buildings they like, and they didn't necessarily go for the highest possible return that you could figure out in an Excel file. They need to love the property, and they still call themselves investors, but it's not just about the numbers, about the property. So those properties are well located, and they are now for big discounts on the market. We looked at a property 2 weeks ago, I think. I need to look at Anna, but I think it was 2 weeks ago, where fantastically renovated. The owner put a lot of money into it. The asking price was 500,000. The deal price was 350,000. A bargain. But that person wanted to sell. In that case, it was someone who just was speculating with too much confidence in the property market, bought a property slightly expensive already, put too much money into renovation. There was no demand for what he did for the level of upgrade he realized. And then, of course, the market is not ready to buy it, so there was no exit for that property. That's deals. Not every deal is like that. Don't get me wrong, but these deals exist, and that is big opportunities. We are looking for other investors at the moment at properties at good locations in Poble Sec, in main streets in different parts of Barcelona, where the prices are just very, very sharp, are below what you would have seen in January. And the only thing you need is, and now I'll speak to the investor audience, you need to be able to look beyond the current economic situation. You need to be able to look midterm. So of course you might not be able to rent out your property tomorrow, because if there is no tourists coming, if people can't travel, there will be a bit less demand. But you buy with a big discount, and that's why you make the business case as an investor. So you buy with a big discount, property can increase in value later. And even if you rent it out now, maybe at a lower rental per month, rental income might go up in the future. I will probably go up in the future as well. So that's a topic on areas where that's related to prices. So we said people that buy properties to live in themselves, those properties might not drop the 7-8% in price. Why? Because if you dream of a property in, let's say, the upper part of the Eixample area, It's a bourgeois area in Barcelona, beautiful, beautiful streets, beautiful old buildings, Art Nouveau. And if that's your dream and you want to find a property that you can renovate and make it really adjust it to your taste, if you find such a pearl now and you get, and you, instead of paying 500, you can pay 440 or 450, then it's your moment. Then you should buy. Because that property will not go below that price. And it's just an example. Or sometimes we've seen properties where the price decrease are very, very limited, 5 or 10,000 euros. They exist as well because they're very sharply positioned on the market. Equally, in the upper parts of town, and we got some questions from the audience on that. If you look at the area above Diagonal, so San Gervasi, Bonanova, etc., I think prices will not drop that far because there is a lot of investor interest, because people want to buy again at good locations and they know there's discounts, but they're happy with a smaller discount, but a better located property. They think long term and not just on the short term ROI. If you're a buyer and you want, what matters to you is only the ROI, if it's only about what percentage you make with your investment, you can also look at the second circle around Barcelona. Then you go towards Horta, a bit further, you go to now Barris. You can look at areas like Hospitalet, which are more working class areas where properties are a lot cheaper, and you can buy maybe 90, 100 square meter for 200, 230,000 euros. The rent won't drop too much there because the people that live there, they need to live, and they probably can't buy a property because of their income constraints. So then you can get to returns that are maybe rather 5-6% before taxes instead of maybe 3, 4, 5 more in the center before taxes. But that is a personal preference. One of the first things we do with our customers is it's not looking at properties. It might surprise you. It's not the first thing we do. The first thing is to listen and to understand what type of buyer are you? Why do you buy the property? Is it just your dream to live in that part of Eixample and to have your glass of wine in the evening on your balcony overlooking the quiet streets? Or you look at an investment which is long-term, you don't want to worry, or you want to rather be in the touristic segment. What risk profile do you have? How much do you want to be involved in renting out your property as an investor? And that determines a lot then areas. That determines areas that come into play or not. Even though returns are higher in Albaris, people might not want to go there because it's not a good fit for their risk profile, or they just don't feel comfortable in that street. They prefer a nicer building. As an investor, you've got two options. Either you buy the property you like to buy with a lower return, or you buy the property with the highest possible return, and you probably don't like the street and you probably don't like the building. But that's a choice to make, and there's a lot of things obviously in the middle. Because there's a lot of investors in this call, one more example. The number one way to increase your return is obviously to finance your purchase through a mortgage with a bank. And you can do that in Spain. The banks are ready to offer mortgages. If you take the example, you put in 50, 60, 70,000 euros, you finance the rest of the property, your returns on your own capital are double digits. For sure, 10% plus, sometimes even 15% plus, and that is massive. What are the alternatives? The money in the bank account, the stock markets, high risk, highly volatile, bonds, all these things have proven that there's a lot of risk involved and not necessarily high returns. So property, people know property is interesting, and the investors are preparing. They're ready to act upon opportunities. I think that's the part on. Yeah, I see. Question is a good question. So buy now or wait 6 months. Let me respond to that. This is interesting. We think price discounts will be there this year for sure. What does that mean? They're there now already, and we see big discounts. But at the same time, you'll find them later. It depends more on the profile of the owner, of the seller, then on the area, or then of the timing of this year. And what you've got to do is prepare yourself very well. Let's have that workshop to understand what profile are you, is it to live, is it to invest, etc. Let's speak to the bank, let's look at how you will finance the purchase, so that when the opportunity pops up, when we spot the best ideal property, you can act on it and you don't miss it. You don't need to rush, but you need to be prepared, because a good opportunity pops up once and someone will buy it. If it's not a good deal, it will stay on the market. But there will be also new deals coming on the market, good opportunities in the next months, later this year. Next year, we don't know, depends a lot on how the economy goes. If the economy actually grows 7% as we think today is possible, then that will have an impact on real estate transactions, on buyer confidence, on prices, etc. And on sellers' reluctance to drop prices. I have a quick look here at questions. Hold on. Okay, so there's a question here from a person who says, how does it compare to the prices? How does it compare to the previous Eurozone crisis? So in the previous crisis, prices dropped 40% across Spain. 40%, a massive drop. And some areas still did not recover entirely from that. Barcelona did recover from it. The big cities recovered mainly from it. But for example, on the coast, on the Costa Brava, on the Costa Blanca, there is the prices are still, not Costa Blanca less, but they're still below prices from 12 years ago. And they will again now have a correction. But the correction again, so in perspective, if we talk now about 7-8% for Barcelona, across Spain, let's say it's around 10%, yes. So it's way less than 12 years ago. Important as well, again, there will be opportunities with significantly higher discounts. Opportunities where, for example, second residences, where there is maybe not that much demand, where people need to sell or want to sell. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see second residences with 10 to 20% discounts on the market. What you need to do as a buyer is understand what is the right price for this property today, build a negotiation strategy, and then decide at what level we make an offer. And it's part of our job as well. So there are other questions here. Will be prices worse in 6 months? It's what I said. So there's opportunities now, but there will be also in 6 months. So I don't think it will be really worse in 6 months. But it's like when you go shopping in the sales periods. If you want a nice fancy shoe and you go in the last week of the sales period, you probably only can buy an average black shoe. Now, sales period takes maybe 4 weeks or so. I'm not the expert in that, but in the property market, it's longer. It's rather months than weeks. But the gems, the pearls, you've got to spot them now, and you can only buy them if you're prepared, if you're ready for it. So there's more questions here on different areas, like what about Clot, San Andrea, the Bessos? Again, Clot is becoming more and more part of the central area of Barcelona because the location very well connected to the sea. You can walk to the sea in 20-25 minutes. So their demand from investors high, also from potentially local people who can buy with financing. Adriana Bessos is very different. It's a economically speaking, a poorer area of the city. There will be a higher impact of the recession. More people will lose their jobs. More people will be on this temporary unemployment schemes, etc. So there will be less demand from local buyers for sure in these areas, and there is rental demand will be strong there. So yes, but you need to. Depends if you wanted to live yourself or to make an investment. Both are possible, and I think both as well with interesting deals. Yeah, Another question here we see, bargains are not on the public market websites. How to get to know about them? Good question. That's our job. we need to find them. What does that mean? Just imagine someone tells an agency around the corner, or someone tells a notary or a lawyer they know that they want to sell their property. And what is the first thing the agent is going to do? He's not going to first take pictures of it and write a description of the property and translate that description and pay the larger websites for a listing. No. The first thing you do is make a quick and dirty set of pictures, a video made with a phone, and they send it to 5 contacts, or they call up 5 contacts and they say, I've got something really good, and the owner is willing to negotiate. Are you interested? We are, and that's an Anna. Anna is very often the first or the second person to see a property when a property comes on the market, or someone from our team is the first or second one to see the property on the market. And that is these opportunities. You only can find them through the network. Big part of our daily job, besides working with customers, is maintaining that network. Only if we qualify our buyers properly and we know exactly what you have in mind, what is the type of property, location, budget, etc. you have and you want to go for, we translate that to our network. A network knows we got qualified buyers, and that's when they also are responsive and share their best opportunities with us, because they know that if it's the matchmaking probability is a lot higher. See two questions here on mortgages. How easy to get a mortgage for a non-resident? Perfectly possible, as long as you have healthy financials, meaning some stable income, not too much debt, and that should be possible. Some banks, every bank is different. Some banks say no to, for example, US residents, because they have an income in dollars and there's a risk on the payback of the mortgage, according to some banks. Other banks don't discriminate and they just provide mortgage to anyone. I can help you with that. It's part of my job to look at financial planning and optimize mortgages. You've got to be very careful with mortgages in Spain, that there's a lot of, also there, transparency improved, regulation improved, the new mortgage law from last year, but it's still poor. The banks try to, if they can, I'm looking for the right word. Okay, it doesn't matter. If they can cheat on you, they will cheat on you. Meaning hiding costs in a mortgage that shouldn't be in the mortgage, but they're hard to detect. Charging excessive amounts for life insurances, while maybe you don't need a life insurance. Or making low interest rates conditional upon many conditions that limit your freedom, that limit your options as a buyer. And so you got to be very careful with that. It's not just about the interest rates. We had a case with a buyer a few weeks ago, and her current bank said you get a mortgage at I think 1.5 fix, which is very low. And then we looked at the conditions, and then another bank offered, her situation was very particular, and there was other debt involved, etc. The other bank said it's going to be 2.3, but the 2.3 was not conditioned upon anything, and was better than the 1.5 with all the conditions and extra costs involved. So be careful when you compare these mortgages. Banks offer, if you're a resident and you have an income, they finance easily up to 70-80% of the property value. If you're non-resident, it's typically lower, and you might have to bring 40% of the purchase price yourself to the table to buy the property. Some banks also finance renovations if the property needs renovation. Otherwise, you could pay that with your own money. Just looking at some more questions here. Yeah, with the banks, you've got to compare is the message, and make sure the proper comparison, not just of interest rates, of all the components. Very good question here. What is a reasonable offer on a property in Barcelona? Example, property listed at 300K. How much lower can you offer? I wish there was a single answer to that question, but again, there isn't. In general, properties are overpriced, because what I said in the beginning, agencies overpromise to sellers and therefore need to make a double correction now. But not all agencies do. And not all owners want to follow that approach. For example, we are investors as well ourselves. So when we sell properties we've renovated, for instance, I'm a believer of setting a fair market price and the property sell quickly. That's my preference. And quite some owners prefer that instead of waiting. So there's no rule to know. We have clients where Anna runs the appraisals for customers. And sometimes we compare properties. And for one, we say, look, you can't negotiate, you shouldn't negotiate anything. This is a very sharp price. And others, we need to put an aggressive offer in. Maybe Anna, you want to explain or expand a bit on that question?
Yeah. Hi. To respond to your question, of course, it depends from where it's located. So location makes a comparable element to compare a property, but of course of the features of the property. So meaning what kind of light has, if it's facing south or north, if it has elevator, how good the building is. So there are many questions to answer to let's say, to put an offer and to decrease the price. It's true that most of the properties today are a bit higher than they should be. And Raf has explained very well how the vendors put the price on the portals. But I recommend to, well, what we do, of course, is that we have a database that we pay to the registers and the notaries where all the purchases has been inscribed there. So I'm able to see per street and street number how much has been sold an exact property. So that helps me to know the real difference between the asking price and the real selling price. Of course, you are not able to have that, but if you compare similar apartments on the same neighborhood with the same features, you can see how different or how good this property is. And also you have to take into account if you will have future expenses to maintain that property in terms of obligations as to repair the building or things that the building has to be done yet. So this is important to take into account. I think you are asking another question. What technical and administration documents should the seller provide with his property? Well, unfortunately, legally for a European law, it's only necessary 2 documents, which are the energetic certificate, which gives the ability to see how much electricity and energy it's used in that building. Today, for our way of structure of building, that's quite useless. However, it's needed. And second, and an important thing, a cédula de habitabilidad, which this is a very important document and you have to have it so far you want, for instance, rent it. Many locales comerciales are sold saying that in the shape of an apartment, but they are not apartments. They are locales comerciales, which has been redone to look like an apartment. But if you buy it because you think it's cheap and it's well located, you cannot legally rent it. So cédula de habitabilidad, it's a very important document. But of course, there are other documents which are not compulsory, but in our due diligence, we think are absolutely necessary to have before taking any decision, like the ITE, like the nota simple, like all actas of comunidad that they can be given. So many things that will give you an idea of how the property, how healthy it is, and and to check things that can have an impact in your future economy.
Thanks, Anna. I mean, to that point, many agencies, because they don't have to, if you don't ask, they typically don't mention the topic, they don't give the documents. And actually I think in 90%, 90+% of the purchase transactions we do for our customers, the selling agent does not have the information we request. In 90%, that's a massive number. It's true, we are rigid. Our due diligence is very properly done. We don't want to, because I said in the very beginning, our role at Inspire is to make sure that you don't take a wrong decision. You can't make mistakes, and there's no fraud, there's no problems, no debt, etc., etc. So to guarantee that, we've got to check a lot of things, and the agencies work the following way. They got one, what I call a commercial guy or lady. She has a few information points, few data points about the property, not always accurate, but he or she opens the door, shows you the property, and will try to convince you that this is the best property for you. The way to do that is by saying a few things. One, this is a great property, very sophisticated messaging. Two, someone else is coming back tomorrow for the second time, and they come with their parents, they really like it. So if you like this property, you should come today and make an offer today and pay a deposit of 2,000 or 3,000 euros. Typical technique. So it's a lot of pressure on the buyer if you like the property. But again, what I said in the beginning, there's lack of transparency. You don't have the information you need to take a decision. So we never do what the agency says. You've got to build your own story, have your own plan to evaluate and to buy that property. And evaluation can go fairly quickly sometimes. So it's not too risky to lose a property. You just have got to be make sure we don't miss steps in that process. Example: Anna is the negotiator, as I said. So we negotiated a deal on the property. Everything is on paper. The offer has been submitted. The deposit has been paid for the offer. It's been signed. The offer has been signed by the owner, and then we always make sure that our offers are conditional upon a lot of factors that we might not be able to check on day one, but we know we can check on day 2, 3, and 4. But we don't want to make slip, or we don't want to lose that property, so we make conditional offers with proper contracts. And then the next day, and that was yesterday, then Anna figured out that so the agency was lying to us, basically. They said that the building passed the mandatory technical building inspection, and they said there is no maintenance cost foreseen on the building except the standard maintenance costs. So when Anna was doing her homework, we figured out that actually the building did not pass the technical building inspection, so a clear lie from the agency. We confronted the agency with the facts, with the documents, from architects, from the College of Architects of Barcelona, saying this property has not passed the inspection. Here is the 90-page report with all the defects the building has. And she would just repeat the same. No, they told me it passed, the owner told me it passed the technical inspection. So that's very hard to understand for many foreign buyers. An agency can say, no, it passed the inspection, it did not pass, okay? Now, what does this mean in practice, in this example? There's an estimated cost of 4,000 or 5,000 euros per owner of the property, okay? But there is a deal on the table agreed, so now needs to be rediscussed how that's going to be managed. It should be absorbed by the owner. The owner says, no, he doesn't want to do it. So now we're working on that part, but it's things that pop up and we got to manage, tackle, and make sure we solve them so that everything is crystal clear before you put another signature, before you make a significant payment. For now, it was only small deposits. So that's that part. Okay. What else I see? What are the services you offer as a buyer? Would you charge me a fixed rate or percentage of so we didn't plan to talk about our services, but if the question is there, I'm happy to do so. It's accompanying buyers, investors from A to Z, from start to the end. We don't start work if we believe that the project is not viable. We don't start work if we believe the customer's expectations, which are way off reality, and we don't manage to convince the person to reasonable expectations. But when we start, we commit. We commit means that we link our fees to success, and success means, if you're a buyer, that we find the property, that you buy the property, and that you get the keys in your hand. So we structure our payment. I'm not going to talk here about prices, because prices or fees can vary by the type of service you need, or where you add most value. At the high level, there is two groups of buyers. One group of buyer comes to us and says, I've seen, or I'm searching for properties myself. I've seen a good property already, maybe. Can you help me make sure that nothing goes wrong? Can you give me these guarantees? Legally, technically, with our architects, estimate the renovation costs, run the due diligence, by the way, never sign a contract that a selling agency gives you. It's not a good contract for you as a buyer. These things are unbelievable what's in there. If there's a problem, then you can't do anything afterwards. So some people come with they are searching, and we help them search. We are now working with Anne. She's from the Netherlands. And what we do is, so she's together with her husband looking at properties. She knows Barcelona, she lives here, but we are there as a soundboard. We are there to help evaluate if properties are good, are worth investigating further. And then we help take decisions. What's our view on pros and cons of a property? Because everyone asks us, what would you do? What do you think about the property? That's our role. Help you decide. And once we decide on the property, Anna negotiates, the lawyer makes the contracts, we do the technical inspection, we make technical certificates by our architects to make sure the property is in good conditions. And there's examples where we spotted recently for someone who's on the call here, the finishes were not very good at some parts. There were some humidities, there were some little things that had to be fixed. So we put these things on paper, negotiate with the selling party. We make sure our architect meets the owner or meets the architect of the seller if it's a new development, whatever. So that these things get fixed before you buy, before you pay. That's one group. The other group of buyers and investors are people who say, help me find the properties as well. Use your network to find the best deals on the market for my profile, for me, for my buyer profile, for my investor profile, and then we screen the market. And that's when we look at off-market properties, when we first want to see them, that is deals that pop up then. We reach out to our entire network, and then you're then in the passenger seat, we're in the driver's seat. Instead of you searching all day the websites and after work going to visit the property, etc., we do that for you because we understand what you want, what is important to you. We know the market, and we make a pre-selection. But we also visit these properties before you see them, because you can never trust an ad or an advertising of property on a listing site. There are never pictures of the building, never pictures of the street, never pictures of the stairs, of the view. So you've got to see the property. We do that, and only the properties that pass our filters, and we got very rigid filters, only these properties we share with you. We first share them in a very pragmatic way, through WhatsApp, through Excel files, through videos, pictures. We tell you why we believe these are good properties and they have some cons maybe, but sometimes it's okay to have a con on a property. And then we go and visit the best ones with you together. If you live in Barcelona, that's easy. If you don't live in Barcelona, we combine obviously these visits in 1 or 2 days when you come over to visit them. So that for this type of buyer investor, many investors are in this group, but also local buyers. It's just like adding an additional module before actually screening the market. We are involved in that part. And maybe a third group, but that's I think part of the service for all buyers, is just helping plan properly. How do I start? What is important? What to take into account? Anticipating things. Most people buy one, maybe twice, and if you're really wealthy and lucky, maybe multiple times a property in your life. We buy properties every week. We visit properties every day. And that makes a big difference. And all our customers are different. Everyone has different priorities, different expectations, different worries, different fears. And we see all it. And when we look at a property, all these things go to our minds. And we have so many more criteria that we look at when we say it's a good property or it's not a good property than what most buyers have. And by the way, the people who sell it, and if it's an agency, for instance, they know who's Inspire. They know they shouldn't fool around. All that they try to, as I said before. But we also typically get to quicker deals, quicker agreements, because we hear people saying, some people say, yeah, I help buyers, and then they say, oh, I always put an offer in 10% below the asking price. That's my strategy. It's not very scientific, and certainly not based on market insights. So you got to be careful with that. I'm going to do a little poll here because I know we're reaching the hour, and people stay on, so that's good. We're going to keep talking. But I'm going to ask 2 questions to you. We can continue afterwards. One is, if this is useful, what we're talking about now, should we do more of these? Is this inspiring for you? Is this helpful for your situation today, for the decisions that you need to make? So that's one thing. And depending on that, we can obviously do then more similar webinars or have specific follow-up conversations with some of you. So you should see a pop-up screen, a pop-up window on your screen. You got 60% has answered, so this is very helpful. I will let's see if everyone answers, I share the results. That's the deal. Let's see. 64% has answered. If you don't mind, if you're still connected and you see the pop-up, please give it a click. It's just rating it from 1 to 10, 10 being, oh, this was very useful, very inspirational for me. And then we can, okay, 80% has answered. It's good score. So let's wait 10 seconds. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, a few more people. You don't have to answer, of course. This is absolutely optional, but it gives us also good feedback on. All right. So 3 more seconds. Nobody else. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll stop the poll. And I'll also share the results. So you should see now as well the results of what everyone has said. So it's encouraging. Thank you. The majority gives us a 10 out of 10, so that's very nice to hear. But that's also important, and I think that's also something we value, or we think is very important when you make a buy or a sell decision. You need to have an opinion. You need to have a view on the market. If you don't have that, then you can buy. It's very easy to buy a wrong property, and we see people and they say, no, I think I've seen a nice property, and you say like, but you know that street? I know, but it's a nice area. Well, we know how the street is at midnight, and it might not be the same as how the street is at daytime, or similar things. So, and there's one more question here for those. This question is basically if you find it interesting, and if you say, I'm interested to learn more about how we could help you, make the right decisions, how we can help you avoid problems. I'm very happy to have me or Anna have a one-to-one personal follow-up call with you. We do that through Zoom. It's very convenient. And in the email message, you will get an automatic email after the webinar here, just saying thank you with our contact details if you want to stay in touch. And there's also a link in there, a similar link as what you used to register for this webinar, a link where you can directly look at my calendar and book a day and time that is convenient for you. So you can do that through it's in the follow-up email that comes afterwards. There's a few more questions coming in, I think. Hold on. With good properties being sold so fast, are the prospective buyers always visiting them? Or do some buy without seeing the property if it fits their criteria? How does a property sell so quickly when people needing to visit? Right, very good question. Depends on the buyer. We've got customers who don't come and see the property. That's typically people, of course, that don't live in Barcelona. I think all our customers that live in Barcelona come and see the property. It's also my recommendation if you live here. But we've got international investors who where we have a good relationship, a trust-based relationship. They know how we work, and obviously this is very different because it's not like we're not sharing a link of a listing agency. What about this property? No, we make our pictures of everything, not just the pictures that they like, what the sellers like. We give our opinion about it. We write it down. We write our opinion down, pros and cons of each property. We share that with you in a structured way. We get on a Zoom call with you if you're not living here to discuss pros and cons. We look at videos of these properties that we made when we visited them, and we help you think through that decision. We help you evaluate them. If you can come, and if you like the experience, it's great. I think everyone who buys property to live in or second residence, all our customers visit them, of course. The people that don't visit them are rather investors, people who buy to let. And again, investor is not necessarily, it's not like a large company or so. It's typically families, self-employed people, just families who have some savings, get a mortgage, or sometimes you have people that go for larger properties and multiple properties, and sometimes they take a decision based on our input and calculations, numbers, Excel files. Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Is there any further questions? I'm just thinking if there's something I missed on my side. I don't think so. Maybe just a short recap, just because I see most people are still there. So this year, opportunities, yes. Across Spain, yes. In Barcelona, yes. People will use the opportunity to buy a lot at good central locations. Sometimes at a smaller discount because they prefer location and it's a long-term view. Banks are eager to finance if you meet the criteria we discussed. Caution is required. Caution again because of the market that's not regulated, and two, about the situation today where agencies struggle to sell and might disappear and might become more desperate. So careful there that you don't make wrong decisions. It's a too important decision to make a mistake. Okay. And from our end, the question was asked. Yeah, if you take our support, our customers, most of them say, and we've got data about that. If you have this budget available to spend on a property, when we work with them, we find better properties, we get better deals. They spend less. They spend less than their initial budget, just because that's the equivalent of the car mechanic. When you buy a car, you got a property expert with you, and who looks after your interest, not the interest of the seller. It's a big difference. So I'm going to close it here. I think thank you very, very much for being with us an hour and 20 minutes. Hope you find it useful, and hope to see you soon back in a personal Zoom meeting. And if there's further questions, I'll show this here, and that's the last thing I do. So here are, after the webinar, what you can do. So if you just want to learn more, stay informed, no specific plans to buy, you can just go to our blog, inspirepartners.com/blog. There's a lot of useful content there, interviews that we did in the media, predictions on the market. You find it there. You can subscribe to a newsletter. And if you want to know more, here's my contact details as well. And we look forward to seeing you. Thanks a lot, and have a very good evening, everybody. Thank you.